All right, let's get right into it. When you hear the word spy, you probably think of cool gadgets and secret identities, but you know what their most powerful weapon really is? It's the way they think. See, intelligence agencies have spent decades building this incredible toolkit of mental models, powerful, structured ways to analyze complex problems, and, most importantly, avoid catastrophic mistakes. And today, we're going to open up that toolkit for you.
So just imagine it's November 27th, 1941. You get this report on your desk, and it's not just some random opinion. This is a special assessment from the State Department. It's confident, it's authoritative, and it's putting the odds of war with Japan at 5-1 against. I mean, that sounds pretty reassuring, doesn't it?
And boom, that analysis was completely, devastatingly wrong. Just 10 days later, the attack on Pearl Harbor happened, and the United States was pulled into World War II. This wasn't just, a simple miscalculation. This was a failure of thinking on an absolutely monumental scale.
So that brings up a huge question. How? How do the smartest, most well-informed people on the planet sometimes get things so incredibly disastrously wrong? It's such a critical question, because the issue wasn't a lack of information. The clues were there. Believe me, the real failure was in how all that information was interpreted. It was a failure to challenge the core beliefs, the things they just assumed were true.
And Pearl Harbor wasn't some kind of one-off mistake. Look at this. What you're seeing here is a chilling pattern. From the Korean War to the Cuban Missile Crisis, all the way to the Yom Kippur War, these major intelligence failures were almost always rooted in the exact same fatal flaw: an unchallenged strategic assumption, an idea that was so deeply believed it was just never questioned, until it was way, way too late.
And here's the crazy part. The biggest problem isn't out there in the world. It's right inside our own heads. We are all, every single one of us, wired with these dangerous mental shortcuts that can lead us totally astray. And it doesn't matter how smart you are.
Okay, so meet hidden enemy number 1, cognitive bias. Our brains didn't evolve to be perfectly rational. They evolved to make quick judgments to survive. So to be efficient, our brain latches onto the first good explanation it finds, and then it starts filtering reality to match that explanation. It actually goes looking for evidence that confirms what it already believes, and conveniently, almost magically, ignores anything that might challenge it. It's a survival tool that becomes a recipe for self-deception in our complex world.
And then there's enemy number 2, groupthink. We're social creatures, right? We're hardwired to want to fit in and be accepted. But that instinct can totally backfire when the pressure to conform becomes more important than critical judgment. You know the feeling. You're in a meeting, you have a key piece of information, but you stay quiet. Why? Because it goes against what your boss or the rest of the group seems to believe. And just like that, the most important insights never even see the light of day.
In this diagram, wow, it just brilliantly illustrates the battleground that's going on in our own minds. You see, true independent thinking, what they call self-authorship, is this delicate balance between our own internal beliefs, how we relate to other people's ideas, and the actual raw data. Cognitive bias and groupthink, they launched an attack on all three, warping how we see the facts, how we relate to others, and even how we see ourselves.
It seems like a pretty tough fight, doesn't it? I mean, if our own minds are working against us, what can we possibly do? Well, it turns out there's a playbook. And this is where we get to learn from the pros. Intelligence agencies and military organizations created a whole set of tools called structured analytic techniques, or SATs. They were designed for one specific reason: to counteract these natural, built-in flaws in how we all think.
The goal here isn't about getting more information. It's about having more rigor. It's about being more deliberate. These techniques literally force you to slow down, to make your thinking process visible, and to intentionally, deliberately challenge your own conclusions. They're basically designed to smash your existing mental models and force you to consider possibilities you'd otherwise just ignore.
All right, so let's dig into the first and, honestly, the most fundamental technique. Every single conclusion you make, every plan you have, is built on a foundation of assumptions. But what happens if that foundation is cracked?
And this is just a powerful real-world example. During the DC sniper case, law enforcement was operating under the assumption that they were looking for a lone wolf in a white van. It seemed to fit the profile, right? But it was completely wrong. And that one single faulty assumption allowed the two actual snipers to continue their horrific rampage for weeks.
So here's the fix. You have to make your assumptions explicit with what's called a key assumptions check. It's a really simple but incredibly powerful process. You actually list out everything you believe to be true for your plan to work.
Then you ask why you believe it. And here's the most important part. You ask yourself, under what conditions could I be wrong? This helps you zero in on the few assumptions that your entire argument absolutely depends on.
Now check this out. This diagram shows how analysts actually visualize their thinking. By mapping out how their assumptions are all connected and how they depend on each other, they can spot the linchpin. That's the one core belief that's holding the entire structure up. If that one thing is wrong, the whole argument just collapses. And that's the assumption you absolutely have to stress test.
So once you've identified your key assumptions, how do you actually test them? Well, you need a challenger. You need someone whose entire job is to try and prove you wrong.
This is where a fantastic technique called Team A/Team B analysis comes in. It's simple. Team A makes the best possible case for the main argument, the consensus view. Team B's job? Their job is to build the strongest possible argument for the opposite conclusion using the very same evidence. The point isn't to win a debate. It's to find the holes and the weak spots in the original plan.
This whole structured process of challenge has a name, devil's advocacy. And it's not about being negative or just poking holes in things. It's about making the final plan stronger by forcing it to survive the toughest scrutiny imaginable. It's like an officially sanctioned way to fight back against confirmation bias and groupthink.
And this quote, man, it just perfectly sums up why these techniques are so critical, especially in big hierarchical organizations. Old ideas, old assumptions, they get stuck. They become like concrete. It takes a deliberate, structured effort to break them apart and see the world as it actually is, not just as we expect it to be.
So, okay, we've been talking a lot about spies and generals and high-stakes intelligence. But here is the single most important takeaway from all of this. You don't need a security clearance to use these tools. These are tools for better thinking that you can use in your everyday life. Think about it. Are you about to make a huge career change? Do a key assumptions check. Literally ask yourself, what has to be true about this new job for this to be a good idea? Launching a new project at work. Assign someone to be the devil's advocate. Make it their job to find all the reasons it might fail. And in any team meeting, you can be the one who actively fights groupthink by making sure the quiet people get heard. These tools are for everyone.
So, I'm going to leave you with this one final question to really think about. In your own life, whether it's about your career, your finances, your relationships, what is the one single, critical, unexamined belief that your world is built on? And what would happen if you were wrong? Thinking like a spy? It starts right there.